There is, and I think that that's a really great point, because in the literature and what a lot of the experts are saying is that muscle mass doesn't matter. The amount of mass doesn't matter, but that's not true. And especially in the aging population, we see that when they lose skeletal muscle mass, we see increase in blood glucose, we see a change in insulin resistance, so they become much more insulin resistant. We see an increase in triglycerides, often an increase in fatty acids. There's all these other metabolic changes. So while strength is important, arguably muscle mass is equally as important. And again, I believe that we're going to start to see changes in the literature when we incorporate directly looking at skeletal muscle.
If you had to give someone sort of a minimum effective dose for resistance training for sort of a combination of strength and muscle mass, what would you say? I would imagine it might change based on like the decade of life a little bit, but let's say maybe pre-age 50 and post-age 50.
Again, this is another really great question, and it depends on the training age. For you, I expect you to be fully trained into your 50s, 60s, and 70s, right? You're going to be doing that forever. But I would say for anybody starting 3 days a week of some kind of resistance training, whether it's 10 to 20 sets, and this is a pretty generic recommendation, but where I think it becomes important is that it's not just resistance training. And resistance training can cover a whole bunch of things. It could be body weight training, it could be yoga, Pilates. There's all different ways that people can do resistance training. I think being able to move weights in space is important.
Yeah.
Because it's important, for example, we both have little kids. What if I needed to be able to pick up both kids and sprint down the street? I want to be trained for that.
Yeah.
I want to be trained for real life. Being able to do a farmer carry or be able to do some kind of sprint interval with any kind of capacity. Being able to move in a translatable way is critical. And I recommend that no matter what age group, you start to learn that. And then as individuals age, they have to be able to fall well. I know that that sounds crazy, but I'm a trained geriatrician and falls are a major concern for me. They have to be able to spring back up or get back up.
Yeah, have you heard of the, I actually just learned about this, the, T2Go, the timed up and go test?
Of course, I did that in geriatric training. So we did the timed up and go test. We did there's a walking speed test, there's a Romberg test, there's all kinds of things.
Speaking of physical frailty, and team and I, actually, I got to give them credit. My team found a really cool study on like caffeine and frailty, and it was talking about like timed up and go. And they actually showed that like the more caffeine intake actually led to less physical frailty later in life, which I found was really interesting. Because if you look at it from an umbrella perspective, it's probably because they were more active because they had caffeine, right?
Yeah.
You can think about all these cardiometabolic benefits and CAMP and all this stuff, and you're like, well, you're just active. That's actually, I had never heard of the timed up and go test until then.
Yeah.
And I was like, what a practical test, just like getting up out of a chair, walking. And people don't realize like when you're 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, that matters.
So walking speed is a big deal, and that's something that we always test in clinic, is walking speed. And we know it's almost like another vital sign.